Ladies and gentlemen, today we stand at a critical juncture in world politics where alliances are being reshaped, partnerships are being tested, and new power centers are emerging. The topic before us is global alliances shift as U.S.-India rift plays into China's hands. For decades, the United States and India have enjoyed what many described as a natural strategic partnership. Bound by democratic values, economic cooperation, and shared concerns over China's rise, the two nations moved closer than ever before in the 21st century. But today, that partnership is under stress. Trade disagreements, energy policies, and diverging national interests are fueling a rift that has the potential to change the global balance of power. And who stands to benefit most from this friction? None other than China, the very rival both Washington and New Delhi once worked together to counter. In this speech, we will explore the origins of the U.S.-India partnership, the causes of the current rift, how China is exploiting this divide, the global consequences of shifting alliances, possible futures in this evolving geopolitical game. After India's economic liberalization in 1991, Washington began seeing Delhi not just as a regional player, but as a future global partner. Shared concerns about terrorism post-9/11s brought the nations closer. The U.S.-India Civil Nuclear Deal 2005 marked a turning point, with Washington recognizing India as a responsible nuclear power. Over the past 2 decades, trade grew, defense cooperation deepened, and the two became central players in the Quadrilateral Security Dialogue, QUAD, with Japan and Australia. This partnership was framed as a counterbalance to China's aggressive rise in Asia. The rift emerged primarily due to India's purchase of discounted Russian crude oil. Despite Western sanctions, U.S. officials like advisor Peter Navarro and Treasury Chief Scott Bessent have criticized India for profiteering, while Washington seeks to isolate Moscow. The U.S. imposed higher tariffs on Indian goods, escalating economic tension. India responded by defending its energy security and strategic autonomy, arguing it cannot afford to depend on U.S.-dictated energy supplies. Trade talks between the nations have slowed, and trust is eroding. At the same time, India is signaling openness to China by resuming talks and reducing border hostilities. This creates a dangerous perception gap. The U.S. views India as unreliable, while India views the U.S. as overbearing. China benefits when India distances itself from the U.S. because it reduces the effectiveness of American containment strategies in Asia. India recently hosted Chinese diplomat Wang Yi for talks about reviving trade, connectivity, and regional cooperation. Beijing is offering Delhi opportunities in BRICS, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and multipolar forums that exclude Western dominance. With India warming up to these platforms, China is pushing the narrative of a multipolar world order where the West no longer dictates terms. Economically, China is using its market size and infrastructure power via Belt and Road projects to entice India back into closer cooperation. Strategically, a less U.S.-aligned India allows China to focus more pressure on the Pacific and less on its contested border with India. The weakening of the U.S.-India axis undermines the QUAD, a key grouping designed to counter China in the Indo-Pacific. It emboldens Beijing to assert itself more aggressively in the South China Sea and beyond. Russia, meanwhile, benefits from India's continued oil purchases, helping Moscow withstand Western sanctions. Europe faces challenges too, as India's balancing act complicates Western unity against Russia. Developing nations, watching closely, may see India's defiance of U.S. pressure as a model for asserting sovereignty against Western influence. Ultimately, the rift risks fragmenting the global coalition that the U.S. hoped to build against both China and Russia. 3 possible scenarios lie ahead. Reconciliation. The U.S. and India patch up differences through compromise on energy and trade. They re-energize the Quad and coordinate against China more effectively. Deeper rift. India continues buying Russian oil. Tensions rise and trade tariffs escalate. Washington shifts focus to alliances with Japan, South Korea, and Australia instead, leaving India on the sidelines. Strategic realignment. India plays both sides, keeping ties with the U.S., while drawing closer to China and Russia in multipolar forums. This makes India less of a U.S. ally and more of a swing power shaping the new order. The shifting dynamics of global alliances reveal the fragile balance of power in today's multipolar world. The rift between the United States and India, two of the world's most influential democracies, has opened up new strategic opportunities for China. What might appear as a bilateral disagreement actually reverberates far beyond New Delhi. And Washington might influences Asia's security architecture, the trajectory of global trade, and the very structure of international diplomacy. First, this rift underscores the limits of strategic partnerships in the 21st century. Unlike the Cold War era, alliances today are not defined by rigid blocks, but by flexible arrangements rooted in shared interests. The U.S. has historically sought to build India into a counterbalance to China's rise. While India has welcomed American investment, defense technology, and diplomatic support, yet India also insists on strategic autonomy, purchasing Russian energy, resisting Western sanctions, and pursuing independent trade policies. This duality has created friction. For Washington, it signals unreliability. For New Delhi, it reflects sovereignty. The clash of expectations has weakened trust, leaving space for China to step in. Second, China's ability to capitalize on this rift demonstrates its agility in international politics. Beijing has long pursued a divide rule strategy in Asia. Whenever U.S. alliances appear shaky, China offers alternative partnerships through trade, infrastructure, and diplomacy. India's tension with Washington makes Beijing's Belt and Road Initiative, regional supply chains, and even limited security dialogues more attractive. Though India remains wary of Chinese dominance, a weakened U.S.-India bond dilutes the pressure on Beijing, allowing it to expand influence across South Asia, Africa, and the Indo-Pacific. Third, the implications for smaller states are profound. Countries like Vietnam, Indonesia, and the Philippines watch closely as India and the U.S. navigate their disputes. If Washington and New Delhi appear divided, these nations may hedge further toward China, believing that American security guarantees are inconsistent. This undermines collective efforts like the Quad, weakens the idea of a free and open Indo-Pacific, and emboldens China's assertive actions in the South China Sea and beyond. However, the situation is not irreversible. Cracks in alliances can serve as moments of recalibration rather than permanent fractures. India and the U.S. still share a deep alignment on critical issues, balancing China's rise, ensuring maritime security, promoting technology innovation, and strengthening democratic resilience. With pragmatic diplomacy, trade adjustments, and mutual respect for each other's red lines, both countries could rebuild trust. If managed wisely, this rift could evolve into a more balanced and durable partnership, one that acknowledges India's independence while securing America's strategic goals in Asia. In the end, the future of the global order may hinge on how this relationship evolves. If the U.S. and India repair their bond, they could shape a coalition that protects open trade, advances technology, and restrains authoritarian expansion. If the rift persists, China will continue to strengthen its hand, rewriting the rules of international politics to its advantage. Thus, the U.S.-India relationship is not just a bilateral matter. It is a central pillar in determining whether the 21st century is defined by cooperation among democracies or dominance by authoritarian powers.